Let us continue our historical journey as we learn more about two of the pastors from 1931 to 1961. Reverend Wsk Abel was born on January 4, 1894 in Dayton, Ohio. After graduating from high school, Abel entered Shirtlift College in Alton, Illinois. In his senior year, he left college to enlist in the regular army as an ambulance driver in World War I, and before the end of the war he became a commissioned chaplain and held the rank of first lieutenant after the war in the Reserve Corps. During his time in the service, he served on the staff in the chaplain's training school, served on the board in the hospital ship, and in army hospitals and all around New York City, and served as an entertainer in the YMCA, hospitals, in camps, and while on board the hospital ship. In 1917, after graduating from Shirtlift College with a Bachelor of Philosophy, he married Edna Sealer on December 25, 1918, a graduate also from Shirtlift College. He enrolled in the Rochester Theological Seminary in 1919, graduating in 1922 with his Bachelor of Divinity degree, and while in seminary he served as pastor of York Baptist Church. After RTS, Reverend Abel accepted the call to serve as pastor of First Baptist Church in Groton, New York. Professor Mohlman from RTS preached the installation sermon. During his time at the Groton Church, he drew up plans for and supervised the construction of a new parsonage. The church auditorium was remodeled and the church office was established and equipped. Abel believed that the church could learn some lessons from the world of business management. And while in college and at Groton, he had worked extensively with the young people, and in particular with the YMCA in Alton, Illinois. And in 1925, he resigned his pastorate at Groton and accepted the call to serve as the associate pastor at Lake Avenue Baptist Church. And then, on September of 1929, Reverend Abel assumed the senior pastorate at LABC. The years of his leadership at LABC were very challenging times. The stock market collapsed in October of 1929, and at the beginning of the 1930s, LABC lost to death numerous long-time devoted members. However, during his 11 years, the endowment quadrupled, a building fund campaign raised $25,000, and receipts totaled close to $900,000. So that meant that in the depth of the worldwide depression, LABC was able to continue its ministry at extraordinary levels. Reverend Abel himself continued LABC's active engagement in civil, educational, and church organizations outside the walls of the church building. He was a trustee at Cayuga College. He was also a trustee at Cook Academy in Montour Falls, New York, and served as a director of the Rochester Community Home for Girls. And furthermore, he served as a trustee of the People's Rescue Mission. And amongst all of these and more, Dr. Abel also teamed up with Judson Press to publish a book entitled Your Money and Your Life. Within the church, prior to the formation of LABC, the Lake Avenue Sabbath School had held an evening worship service. When the church was formed in 1871, a morning service was initiated, and the evening services continued. But as you can see from these announcements, evening services were still being held, and by October of 1938, the services were then discontinued. Here we have a collection of events and worship service announcements that occurred during his tenure. One incredible note is that by the end of his time at LABC, he and Mrs. Abel had hosted more than 5,000 members and friends of the church within their home. In May of 1940, it was announced that Dr. Abel had been called to be the executive secretary to the Board of Education of the Northern Baptist Convention. Shortly after the announcement of his move, he fell ill and was moved to an out-of-town sanitarium, where he remained until the spring of 1941. And in February of 1941, even with his absence, the church held a farewell event. Dr. Abel then died in Hillsborough, New Hampshire on March 10, 1962, at age 68. Reverend Dr. Gerald Watkins was born on October 29, 1897, in Ammanford, Wales. When his family immigrated to the United States, they first settled in Washington, D.C., and at age 11 he was converted and baptized into membership at Temple Baptist Church. They then settled in Fort Plain, New York, where Gerald was licensed to preach by the Fort Plain Baptist Church, where his older brother served as the pastor. In 1921, he graduated from Colgate University with high honors and was recognized by his classmates as being elected to the highest student office in the university. Upon graduation, he settled at Norwich, New York to pastor First Baptist Church, and under his leadership the congregation and Sunday school grew, and a number of young men from that Sunday school class went to Colgate University to prepare for ministry. In 1924, he made the decision to further his education and enrolled in Rochester Theological Seminary, graduating in 1927. While in seminary, he served as pastor at Webster Baptist Church. From there, he accepted a call from the First Baptist Church of Leominster, Massachusetts. In 1928, he became the pastor of First Baptist Church in Cortland, New York, where he stayed until 1936, and while in Cortland, he worked extensively with students at the State Normal School, showing outstanding ability with the problems of college students. In December of 1940, LABC extended a call to Reverend Dr. Gerald Watkins to assume the role of senior minister. The LABC archives contains a great number of newspaper clippings and articles that speak both to his arrival in Rochester and his involvement in a number of different issues of the day. Cayuga College presented Reverend Watkins with an honorary degree in the Doctor of Divinity. In 1945, Dr. Watkins then served as a member of the Post-War Planning Commission of the Northern Baptist Convention. And then in 1947, Dr. Watkins joined a team of Baptist leaders to tour Europe in an effort to assess the recovery needs of Baptist churches in the 7 countries, and while there he attended the World Council of Churches in Switzerland. And then in 1950, Reverend Watkins was also awarded an honorary doctorate degree from Colgate University. And then in 1951, LABC celebrated its 80th anniversary. That was the same year that the church celebrated the 10th anniversary of Pastor Watkins' ministry in LABC. Throughout his time at LABC, Reverend Watkins took a strong stance on the prevention of further world wars. Rally Day continued to be held at the start of the church school year, but LABC may have been one of the few to have Rally Days broadcast on the radio. And then, perhaps early in the history of television, the Christmas Eve service at LABC was broadcast live on December 24, 1950. And then in December of 1953, Reverend Watkins resigned his position at the LABC pulpit after 13 years. After serving as Central Baptist Church in Providence, Rhode Island, Dr. Watkins returned to Rochester to take an interim assignment as professor of homiletics at Colgate Rochester Divinity School. And then, later on, word came from Roswell, Georgia, where Pastor Watkins had recently moved to live with one of his daughters, that he had passed away.